I haven't really decided how to start the podcast yet, but I think something like welcome to what's the name of the show? Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Late to the Movies. My name is Ben Holtz, and every week we're going to discuss a different movie that me or one of my friends hasn't seen before and has always been told they should have. This week, that movie is Alien, and the friends who have been so gracious as to be guinea pigs early on in this experiment this week are Will, who has seen Alien.
Oh, many times.
And Robbie, who has only, as of earlier this week, seen it.
Last night. And I would also like to point out Will is currently wearing an Alien shirt. Did not notice that.
Yeah, we've been talking for a while now, and nope, nothing.
I honestly didn't notice either.
It's Nightmare Before Christmas theme. I feel like in my defense.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a giant xenomorph on my chest,
That's true. Speaking of xenomorphs and chests, the movie we're talking about this week, Alien, has a lot of that. I can't think of a better transition, unfortunately. But before we get into xenomorphs, chest bursting, etc., I want to talk to you guys a little bit about your general experiences with movie watching. That sounds extremely general, but I like to keep it open-ended. You watch a lot of movies? Is it more of a rare thing for you?
Okay. Well, I mean, I haven't seen Alien, so I think we can assume that I don't watch a ton of movies.
Fair enough.
I do enjoy movies, but I definitely don't want to dedicate time to watching something if I don't think it's going to be good, because I hate the feeling of spending like 2.5 hours and being like, what the hell was that?
That's fair.
See, and I'm on the complete other end of that. I'll used to go to the movies probably once, twice a month. Just doesn't matter, C movie, AAA, like love a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I definitely, in that short, brief movie pass period before that terrible business plan went out of existence.
I still have my card somewhere.
Yeah, me too. I was going to a movie a couple times a month. Even saw that weird King Arthur movie in theaters. So,
Oh, that one was fantastic.
So much fun. Not a great movie, but a great time. But yeah, so kind of all over the spectrum. Specific to Alien, what did you know about it going into the movie, Robbie?
Oh, I absolutely knew that it was going to burst from a chest. I knew that.
That's pretty inescapable in pop culture.
Ooh,
I knew.
How'd you feel about that with like the squeamish part of it?
So it is a 1979 movie, so my delicate constitution can handle the graphical effects of the 70s. Luckily,
I just want to make sure.
It's more modern, like Saw stuff that I can't handle, which I think is a important thing to note. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Movie. So like, I don't like blood or gore at all. So me picking a horror movie, that was also like I think I should put horror in quotes because it's not that scary, but it's.
I can imagine people at the time, though, this must have really tweaked them out.
That's fair. They did freak out about Jaws, and this was like right in that.
Yep, just a few years after. So you knew about the chest bursting scene because, like we said, that's
Everything.
just all over the place. I think there's like the first time I saw a version of that scene was, I think, in Spaceballs, I want to say.
Okay.
And there's like a tiny alien that some guy had like bad soup and he has a stomach ache and it jumps out of him. And then it does the Michigan J Frog, Hello, My Darling, Hello, My Baby song.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yes. So that's the first version of this that I think I saw. But other than the chest bursting scene, did you know much about it?
So other than that, I definitely have seen some of the Alien versus Predator movies, which were also ridiculous. So it was interesting to see like the origin of where that came from.
Yeah, fair enough. Obviously, this is one of your favorite movies, Will.
Oh, yeah.
So why is it one of your favorite movies?
I'd say it honestly opened the door to all the sci-fi genre as it is. Me and my buddy had the great idea to watch this when we were in middle school.
Perfect timing.
His parents had all the rated R movies unlocked on demand, and we, just happened to watch this. We're like, oh, it's a great idea. It was also possibly the stormiest day of the whole year, and his house is very old and makes a lot of creaking noises, so that was a fun night.
Great.
But it did open the door to watch all these amazing sci-fi movies over the years.
That's awesome. That makes a ton of sense. For genre, this did a lot too. I think not this, but Aliens, the sequel, Sigourney Weaver gets nominated for Best Actress, and then I think it's only the third Best Actress nominee from a genre film at that point, or at least from horror. So, it's a pretty big deal. Obviously a seminal movie. let's get into it. Robbie, describe the plot of the 1979's Alien.
Oh man, okay. So corporations are bad, I think, is the number one plot point of this movie. But so these space miners or cargo haulers, they don't really specify where the cargo came from. They got this and they need to bring it from one point in the galaxy to another. Along the way, they get woken up early and they need to go investigate alien signals because that's also a thing cargo miners do. And it turns out that there is an alien on this planet, and they uncover like an egg thing. It sucks on this guy's face, and then a much scarier version bursts out of his chest, grows to be a giant alien, and starts picking off the crew one by one. Very intelligent. Sigourney Weaver has to, carry the entire team because everyone wants to do the exact opposite of the right thing. By the end of the movie, she's the only one left. Surprise, surprise. And just jettisons this thing out of a goddamn spaceship. It was amazing.
Perfect. Yeah, very succinct. And that is essentially it. It's a pretty simple plot line. There is, 7 characters?
7 characters.
And a cat that's sort of troublesome and the big alien. And that's essentially it. I think you hit everything. But before we finish, let's talk a little bit more about it.
Oh, well, I thought you wanted me to give me like a brief summary and then but
no. I mean, we could end the podcast right here, but let's talk a little bit more about it.
That's everything.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, do we need to go chronologically or do we want to just jump all over the place?
Well, I'm curious. You said surprise, surprise, Sigourney Weaver's the last one there at the end, but going into it, did you know that she was the star of the movie? Because she's really doesn't emerge until maybe 45 minutes in.
I did, just because she's such a big name.
It's hard to avoid.
I feel like there's also pop culture jokes about her being the person in Alien.
Mm-hmm. So that's one thing I tried to focus in on this time is, at what point is it clear that she's the star of the movie? This is her first main role in a movie for her in her career. Tom Skerritt is billed over her, the guy who plays Dallas.
Okay.
So, it's kind of like 45 minutes in before she even really has lines. So
yes,
she's kind of just like one of the crew, especially the people who actually leave the ship at the beginning and explore the big crescent shaped ship. She's not in that crew. She's back, just kind of hanging back. So yeah.
I think what you notice right away, if you're going in it like I am, knowing this is the main character, so you're watching her, but you notice the maintenance crew starts talking about how nobody cares about what they do. And then one of the very next scenes is Sigourney down there being like, what are you guys up to? And they're like, get out of here, Sigourney. Ripley. So I'm going to use the character's name. But they're like, get the hell out of here. And she's like, okay. So it's like, all right, obviously this person is actually interested in what the operations of this ship are. But then it's crystal clear when they're like, hey, this guy got messed up on the planet. Should we bring him inside? And she's absolutely not. Don't bring him inside.
Yep.
And then it's clear. It's okay, she's the only one thinking here.
Yep. That's where Ash starts being shady too. But yeah, that's a good point where she's obviously the person who's the most clear-headed about, the rules. If this person's very obviously bringing an alien species onto the ship, we can't just let you in.
And even before that, she was like, hey, we just realized we translated this and it's not an SOS, it's a warning. We need to stay away. Yep. And that's Ash is let them, they'll figure it out. What? No, if it's a warning, they should know that it's a warning.
Yeah, they absolutely should. So, okay, interesting. Like you said, should we go chronologically? I don't know. I have notes as granular as my thoughts on the opening credits, so we don't really have to dig too far into it.
Well, you had mentioned the cat, and I do.
Yeah.
I drilled in on the cat, and I did want to clarify because I think I missed it at the end. What happened? Because I believe it got on the ship with her.
Yep.
But I didn't see did it end up dying in the end there, or did she get to? She froze it in the pod, right? No.
She throws it in the pod, and then does her last thing, and I think she's holding it at the end, so I don't know.
Okay, she definitely.
But it is, I think, able to be cryogenically frozen. Which is good because she's cryogenically frozen for, I think, 57 years before the events of Aliens. So.
Oh, and that's the Aliens is the second one. Okay. Yeah, no, there was definitely a point where I was concerned that the cat got face-huggered too, because I think she left it for a while, and then the alien seemed to have been near it, and I was like, oh man, what did it do to the cat? But
she goes back and gets it, and it's fine. She throws it around a lot as she's getting into the shuttle.
She's lucky she brought it, because she's running for her life. So props to Ripley.
Opening credits are great. That's my first note.
Oh.
I like how it comes in just sort of like one line at a time across the screen. That's echoed in most of the sequels and Prometheus, which, again, we were talking about this before the podcast, but at the time, Ridley Scott says it's not an alien movie.
It's definitely an alien movie.
It's definitely an alien movie. That's, no longer really a debate. But even that has the same kind of opening thing. You took issue with the Chiron at the beginning for how much cargo the ship had.
I realize it's petty, but I'm just saying 20 billion tons is way too... 20 million tons or 20 billion pounds is just... It's too much. It's a ridiculous number.
It's a lot. It's definitely a lot.
And I just didn't need it. You could have left the information out and I wouldn't have had to Google how much asteroids weigh to have a comparison, but...
I think the opening does a really good job introducing you to this really specific aesthetic of the film. It brings you through the corridors up to really, I guess, the bridge of the ship before everyone even wakes up. And it eventually gets to the humans, but that's a little bit later. Any thoughts on just the overall look of the film? Because I think that's obviously one of the most iconic things about it.
Well, definitely like the look of the film. I think, and this comes into like my pickiness with movies. I obviously don't watch a lot. So the opening scene that you enjoy, it sets up the ship. I was like, this is too long, and you could have like cut out like half of this, because like it really doesn't start until the crew wakes up. I get what you're saying now, that like that's the shot of like, hey, take in the scope of like the scenery, and I can appreciate that, but maybe like let me have some context of what the movie is before you do that. I don't know, but that's a director thing, and it's a well-known movie, so I'm not gonna tell them how to change this like Academy Award winner or whatever.
So yeah, what do you think about the general look?
Honestly, I'm a huge fan of like how grungy and dark and like disgusting it looks, because I feel like a lot of like more modern like sci-fi movies, it's always very pristine, very white. Like you never see a cleaning robot or cleaning people, but it's always spotless. And I feel like it really speaks to like the style of how terrifying the movie can be because of how disgusting and dirty it is.
One thing I didn't expect to really pick up on this time, but I did, was thinking in terms of what are the main touch points for people seeing this movie for space movies. And this is 2 years after A New Hope comes out. So that's the main thing. A New Hope comes out in 1977, this 79. Empire Strikes Back isn't until the next year. So I look at this a lot of, obviously Ridley Scott had seen that before making this movie, and it doesn't really mention this. I can't find any corroboration for this, but just my impression of it was this is anti-Star Wars in a lot of ways. It's gross. It's pessimistic. There's not really that much heroics. It's just, corporations are bad. It's like a huge anti-capitalist message, I think. And here are these non-heroes who are just trying to get by.
Yeah, they're literally just playing delivery.
Yes, and I think that starts with the aesthetic. It's not sleek. It's kind of weird. It has a lot of shots of the underside of the ship, like the iconic opening of Star Wars, but it's not straight lines. It's bubbly almost. It's like even the ship looks gross.
Yep.
It's a lot of weird spheres that are at different intervals, and
just rugged usefulness. Nothing about the ship is designed to be.
No,
and I don't even.
It's barely aerodynamic. It looks like if it ever went into atmosphere, it would fall apart immediately.
I don't know if they were joking or not, but at one point the character mentions, "I'll buy dinner before we all like." So even to the point of capitalism, of like they have to buy their own food on this ship that they're forced to live on. But I couldn't tell if that was a serious statement.
I hope so. I didn't pick up on that, but I hope they actually have to like go to a vending machine or something. So that's pretty much where we start. Everyone wakes up in this scene that kind of echoes. it almost looked like egg pods. I think that's probably on purpose, that where the humans sort of rise up from.
Yeah,
but then
yes.
they're essentially just having breakfast, and you can tell it's a crew. It's very much just people sort of giving each other a hard time, complaining about their wages, but not like in an angry way, and kind of, this is obviously a conversation they've had many times way.
So something I noticed right off the bat, and I'm sorry, but
No,
so
We got an endless amount of time, so go ahead.
definitely like a period piece kind of reminder. But so I'm a smoker. I've tried to quit smoking many times, and what I noticed was, so these people just got to cryogenically sleep their way through withdrawals, and the first thing they do, they wake up, is start smoking again. And like obviously that's what they do because this was the 80s and everyone was smoking like a chimney. But it was just like it was a very weird, like you wouldn't see that today.
Oh no, not at all. It's like every other second someone's lighting up another cigarette.
Absolutely.
And they look so cool. People smoking in movies look cool, so I'm sure that makes it just that much harder to not smoke.
I mean, I'm sure the Jurassic Park scenes, it definitely contributed to me picking it up, because that guy in the, I'm too old for this shit kind of thing with the cigarette was, he's awesome. Anyways.
Yeah. Any thoughts on this? I don't know if you got cut off. But.
No, it's more like, I think the thing that you always notice is like everyone's very groggy. Like I feel like it's just like everyone's hungover, like they're like just barely eating some food, just drinking coffee. No one wants to be there kind of like idea when it first opens up.
Well, and I mean, that explains the, oh man, I'm awake. Let me light up this cigarette.
So you mentioned that you kind of just like, okay, come on, let's get to the plot of the movie. I think at this point it does a good job of not really laying out what's going to happen. It's just these people, they have a job. It's blue collar. They're just doing their job and they don't really want to, but this is what their contract says they have to do. Pretty quickly, they get the signal from, if I was more of a nerd for this, I would know the exact like planetoid, LV2241 or whatever it is. Do you know?
Honestly, I have a shirt that's like Jurassic Park themed and it has like, I think it's LV426.
That sounds right. So there you go. If I was a little bit more nerdy about it, that's where I'd be. And then we get to that planet. Am I missing anything else? I mean, there's obviously other stuff that happens, but for the main sort of broad brushes here.
It was interesting. I mean, you brought up the contract briefly. I definitely like kind of dialed in on that because they were talking about, they get this alarm signal and they're like, wait, we just need to get this crap home. Like, we don't want to deal with this. And they're like, oh, it's in the contract. We have to. It's like, do you guys have your contract? Because it seems like you're bound by like some ridiculous, like, oh, if you don't do this, you lose your share. If you,
yes.
Like, wow, this is a ridiculous, corporation that they're working for.
I mean, my assumption is like any other job. You're like, yeah, where's the dotted line? Let me just sign this shit. Like it's like,
exactly.
Hey, do you want this patch for your phone? Well, here, do you want to sign and agree? And no one fucking reads those things.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, it's immediately, really the first action of the film are people saying, hey, that's obviously super dangerous. We don't want to do that. And someone being told, actually, in the fine print of your contract, it says you have to do this for no extra pay.
Just, I signed up to be a minor, but I guess I have to make first contact where applicable. Like,
yeah, it's literally like written into their contract that they kind of have to. Yeah,
that's because I was going to make a joke about it, and then they're like, no, it's in our contract. I was like, well, there goes that. Because I was like, why are they even doing this? The movie wouldn't even happen. But it's like, nope.
That is, yeah, that would be your first question as a viewer, and it's smart enough that the characters are like, wait, I don't want to do this. Why are you making me do this?
Like, oh, they don't want to do it either. Okay, we're on the same page here.
Yep. Also in the beginning is the first time you realize that I guess it's an AI or just a VI running the ship is called Mother, where we're getting into the kind of gender and sexuality stuff that Ridley Scott wanted to drill down on in this movie, which we'll talk about more as we go.
Okay. Yeah, no, the choice of mother was definitely a little like uncomfortable because I just think of it's always used weirdly if somebody's using the term like mother. Like it's never like a.
I mean, you could also go with like HAL 9000.
I mean, you could just call it Siri. I mean, there's anything.
Yeah, it could have been called, just like a normal woman's name or something. But nope, calling it specifically Mother is creepy.
I have to ask a mother, like, you're a grown man. That's a little weird.
Yes. Yeah. So that's definitely all on purpose, the sort of discomfort that gives you. We pretty much get to the planet from there. And just real quick, like you said, it does have a reputation of starting a little slowly.
Oh,
but the first hour of the movie, maybe 45 minutes until Kane gets face hugged on the Crescent ship, which I think Ridley Scott calls a croissant, whatever. I just love it. It's like bad film crit to say this, but it's just got like such good vibes. I just love it sort of taking its time. It's like dark and moody and everyone's sort of just chilling out. I just love it.
I mean, I was only specifically mentioning that first opening scene. As far as like the setup goes, I think it was a very interesting dynamic between the crew. Like my first thought of it was like, this is a sociologist's like wet dream, because this is a very weird setup of like different individuals, and there's only 7 of them to do this whole mission. So it was a very unique like cast of characters, I think.
Yeah, so you're looking at it like the real world on MTV pretty much.
Yes, and like again, I realize that movies aren't supposed to be viewed that way, but that's just where my...
No, I think that makes a ton of sense. That's totally something I think they're trying to drill down on too.
Just the class divides even, you got the different shares that people get.
Yep. I wrote a lot about how cool everything looks, so I'm just going through my notes right now. If you guys want to jump in with anything else, but yeah, so we get to the planet, which you said the actual name of the planet.
Yes, because I'm a big nerd.
And this is the first time that the H.R. Giger designs come in. He did the design for the alien and also this planet and the ship that they find the eggs on. And his partner who worked on the alien, they won the Academy Award for special effects that year. It's the only Oscar that this movie won. But yeah, so we can start talking about sort of the cooler, very dark, really unprecedented design elements that come into the movie once they get to this planet.
I think when they were first on the planet, and to the slowness of the story, I think I did zone out a little bit right when they first got out of the...
It's very dark and it's hard to see anything. And I guess on purpose.
I feel like they mentioned something about the textures of the planet, and I thought that was like interesting. And I related to that as like, oh yeah, if I was on some weird random, like that would be something that stuck out to me. But it was like a comment on like how organic and primordial it was, which I thought was a cool, like that's a cool observation. And that's where you would expect to encounter some weird random life source, like maybe this is an alien experiment trying to grow new life that we ran into, or something. I mean, the mind goes endless places. I happen to know it was going to chest bursters, but it could have went anywhere.
It's weird that you bring up like an experiment to grow new beings and all, because that is sort of what eventually the Alien franchise gets around to is like where these things came from and who made them and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. So I because the Predators built them. I wasn't sure if they. Okay. Well, that's the impression I got from the AVP movies is or maybe not built them, but they planted them places to hunt. So I guess that's a little different than building them.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about AVP's effect on canon.
It's kind of like hanging out there. It's more toward the actual creation of them in the Promethean movie, where you find out that they're almost like biological warfare.
Yeah. So by the way, I'm very excited to continue the watch of I need to watch the rest of this Alien universe because I was very pulled in. So I do want to specify as much criticism as I get. I think it's like a really awesome, very interesting concept.
So yeah, the Ridley Scott movies, which is the first one, and then almost 40 years later, he comes back and does Prometheus and Alien Covenant. Those are all very specifically about the xenomorphs were developed as essentially chemical weapons by the engineers, and also the engineers designed humans and then decided to kill all the humans by exposing them to these aliens, but it didn't work.
A very long way to kill all humans.
It does, but that's what Prometheus is about.
Okay.
It's definitely a wild ride.
I mean, if you compare the two species, I mean, the aliens have it, right? I mean, we're not standing up to those.
Well, like Ash says, it's a perfect organism, but that's way later. We don't even know Ash can operate as only a head at this point. So they're the 3 who go out on the planet is Dallas, Kane, and Lambert, I want to say.
Yes.
And they, one thing that I had never really noticed before, the camera that's being fed back to the main ship for people there to watch what they're seeing through their helmets it's like a found footage horror movie all of a sudden. And I don't know of anything that came before that. I'm sure if I was a better, an actual like film historian or something. I'm sure at some point someone had done that, but it just feels like there's a lot of movies, especially sci-fi found footage horror stuff about, the Dark Side of the Moon or whatever.
Cloverfield.
Yeah, so that stuck out to me as, has this actually been done before? That it doesn't dwell on it, but there's definitely like a found footage horror aspect to what's going on at this point. So they make it up to the ship. This looks so cool. This is one of the first times where it's really like, how did they do this? How big a set did they build for this? As they're climbing into the ship, I assume some of it's matte painting, but it looks awesome as they're going through the ship. And it's just sort of creepy as they walk through the hallways. They're describing what they're seeing. And then everyone besides Kane wants to go back pretty much. Kane goes down what seems to be a pretty small hole that opens into a massive cavern.
I was very like the dynamics of it before that, to get up to where the guy's sitting in the chair is like, once we get up this wall, it opens up. I couldn't really picture the layout of this ship.
You're totally right. That happens first before he gets down there. Is they find what for years was called the space jockey in Prometheus. It turns out it's an engineer, but we don't have to call it that because that's not a term that exists in this franchise for another 38 years or whatever. But yeah, so the space jockey, the guy who kind of has like an elephant head, he seems to be in like a big chair, maybe looking at a telescope type thing. One of the cooler sets maybe ever built. It looks so cool.
Yeah, I mean, my immediate thought was like, knowing the face huggers and they showed like this giant being with a hole in the chest, is like, oh, I want to see what that thing looks like. Like, what comes out of something that large?
Yep. I think they even say it looks like he exploded from the inside.
They do say that.
That's just a great teaser for in a horror movie. Talking about people exploding from the inside.
To watch it from that view for the first time, though, I would love to know what like an initial viewer in the 70s thought when they saw, like, did they know that's what was coming? Like, was it like an obvious thought to you of like, oh, it's going to burst out of their chest later too? Or
yeah, I wonder. It's impossible not to know that going in for like people who were born like us in the 90s.
Right.
Watched it as adults or even, 12-year-olds or whatever.
Oh yeah, it was great.
So I think this is another time where the beginning of the movie, it's introducing you to this really industrial sort of practically conceived look. And now all of a sudden it's this H.R. Giger referred to the style as biomechanical, like blurring the line between, humans and machines and aliens and machines. Just this vision of just awfully weird and unique sort of organic looking machines, more or less.
Almost like Zerg-like.
Yeah. So now all of a sudden you've seen that look that's so much different than at this point, maybe you've only seen Star Wars as a space movie or like much earlier B-movie type stuff. And then all of a sudden you're seeing this, which is really beautiful art direction, but also so just hellish. Just looks so awful, but in like a really kind of pristine way.
This is the first horror in space. I mean, what were audiences even expecting? They wouldn't know what to expect. We see this all the time, but
yeah. And no one's ever really done it like this again because it just looks so good. But not to harp too much on that, but that's obviously an important, iconic part of this movie too. So yeah, anything you want to add?
No,
nothing about the elephant guy.
I mean, I love the design of it. It definitely like gives you the scale of how giant these beings were.
Yeah.
Where like the actors and actresses have to like climb over these things, and it probably was just a step for this guy. Like he would have been like 15, 20 feet tall, just sitting in his giant chair. Like
yeah, and I guess that makes more sense when they do get Kane. At least is the only one who goes down into the chamber with all the eggs, and it looks so massive.
Yeah, and then you have these guys like 15 feet tall.
Yeah,
it's probably
at least
like,
twice as tall.
Like 30-foot ceilings.
Well, the rest of the crew must have went down there and they just didn't show it off screen because they did have to. They had to carry it back. Yeah. So it's interesting that nobody just like. I mean, I probably would have brought an egg back, right?
Well, my assumption he was like hooked up to like the zip line, the
maybe
cord.
they just
I think they
fished him back.
Yeah, I think they just pulled him right back up.
That's the way to go. I mean,
Yeah,
that's even smarter.
It shows like latch onto his face and then it just cuts back to the ship and they're like dragging
carrying
him back.
Yeah, I definitely was curious about like what went on there, but I guess that's the most logical, like, because he would have shown that if it wasn't important.
That makes a ton of sense. So for you guys, at what point would you have stopped? So everyone's like, let's go back. Kane's like, actually drop me down this hole. Then he gets down there. He sees that there is like a mist represented by kind of crude, but still pretty awesome looking lasers that are covering the eggs. And he's like, well, obviously I'm going to go under that layer. And then he touches it, it opens, then he sticks his face just about right in it. So I feel like I wouldn't have gone down the hole personally.
I feel like once you go down the hole and then you see all this stuff, but like I feel like after you see there's some kind of organic material in there, you're like, hey, maybe we should bring another team in here. Well, this is a bit too big of a ship for me.
Even before it opens, he can see that there's something in the egg
it's like swirling
moving
around.
Yeah,
that's a good point. I think in a thought I definitely had when they saw the big giant alien, they said organic matter, and they were like, he's been here so long, he's fossilized. So would I have gone down into the hole is a different question. I probably would have because of who I am as a person, but I know that's the wrong call. I would hope there's controls in place that prevent me from going down this hole, like teammates that are like, no, you can't go down that hole. But like, I mean, as a scientific mission, you would never let somebody go off like that, let alone start poking things.
It's also really interesting that there was still like a actual distress call coming from the ship when he was literally fossilized in a seat.
Right. And I mean, the electricity or the signal was still going off.
According to Prometheus, he's been there for 28 years.
28?
I think that's the full amount of time since that guy sat down in that chair.
Okay, so there's a bit of a disconnect. Maybe he just looked like he was fossilized. Maybe they're born fossilized.
I think they just were like, actually, that's not as interesting. Let's tell a different story.
All right,
35 years later.
Well,
a little bit of retcon going on.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I would have like touched the eggs. That definitely would have.
No thanks. Yeah, if you get down there, you're like, I owe it to science to see what's up with these eggs. And then you look and you go, yep, there's living stuff in them. That's all I owe to science. I'm out of here.
Well, and I think that's where you go with the question of like, what did the audience think when they first saw that burst open chest? Because you got to be thinking something clearly killed this guy.
Yes.
And then you go downstairs and there's organic things still there. And it's like, okay, well.
Yeah, it's like, how did these things survive but not this guy? On top of the fact that it would have been really interesting to see what happened if the synthetic ended up going instead, because he volunteers.
Yep.
And he was sent there for that. I mean, we'll get to that later, but
Yep.
I'm surprised he didn't make himself go. Like, I'm chief science officer. You have to let me go. But I guess he
it
knew
might
that.
be like too valued of a position that it can't let him explore.
Well, yeah. I mean, because the other interesting choice was the captain went, which put Ripley into the position we'll get to in a little bit.
Mhm.
But that wouldn't have happened if he hadn't decided to go. So the hierarchy is definitely very important with this movie.
I'm trying to imagine, and a lot of this will be us talking about trying to imagine what audiences thought the first time they saw this. But up until the face hugger pops out of the egg and latches onto Kane, I guess you don't really know the style that the horror in this movie is going to take.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been like the maintenance people killing the crew. It could have been like a thriller that way. It didn't necessarily have to be an alien.
Yeah, you've seen, not aliens like this, really. But it's so violent and such a violation of Kane that it's really, I'd love to know what audiences thought at the time. It was kind of not super well received, but pretty quickly established itself as a classic film. So I guess at the time people were just like, I did not enjoy that.
Well, if you think about it, I wouldn't picture people that really loved Alien necessarily being the people that really love Star Wars. Mm-hmm. So if their initial audience was people like that loved space from Star Wars, I mean, this gave birth to a different group of people that loved space. Like those are two different avenues to go down. So that's interesting.
Like, this one's all space, like Jedis and magicians and all this crazy stuff. And then there's if you go into space, this thing's going to murder you.
Very different stories.
Very different stories. So from there, we cut back to the ship. We talked about this already, that Ripley's the only one who doesn't want to let them in. and says, when you're not on board, I have command, and I'm saying no, quarantine for 24 hours or whatever. Ash lets them in anyway. Then there's a really great shot that I forgot about where you don't actually see the facehugger immediately. They're cutting the helmet off of Kane, and then it comes off and you see it, and it's gross, and it has a sack because everything in this movie has a sack. And it's just, I think this is, you see like the tail kind of tighten around his neck and stuff. It's
very slimy and
very slimy. They try to cut it off him. Then they have to go on an acid hunt to try and find the acid as it goes through the ship, which is really cool.
Well, and so that was an area where I got to like kind of experience as a new viewer, because I knew alien blood is acid, but like I forgot that going into this, right? Because I mean, I haven't seen AVP for years, so I saw it on his face, and it like tightened his neck. I'm like, just cut it off. What are you guys doing? This isn't a problem. So to see the acid when it came out, I was like, oh man, that's really cool. And like, yeah, no, you can't cut it off. Like, you can't kill it because it will just melt through his face anyway.
Yep. It'll melt through his face. They think maybe it's what's giving him oxygen at this point. Mm. Yeah, so it's God, so cool. I put acid hunt. Everyone loses. Ash is really shady.
My note says squirrely guy is squirrely, so I'm glad we were on the same page there.
Squirrely guy is squirrely.
It's really funny because like I haven't watched it in like a little while, and
yeah, same.
Like refreshing it, you forget some things, but like Ash always stands out. Like going in, like knowing what happens to the whole movie, like he's just like a bad time and he never really like expresses any form of emotion. Mm. Like there's some crazy things happening in the movie, and he's just very like stone faced. Like he walks very bionically.
Yes,
like he gives off a whole awful vibe.
It's the very first thing is the SOS, and he's like, no, don't let them know. Like, who cares? And it's like, it was just a very weird, like, I don't know, why are you gonna stop them from giving more information?
One thing I appreciate about the newer Alien prequels is that there's a synthetic on board each of the missions, but they know it's a synthetic. It's not like a hidden part of it, because I think obviously a viewer going into that would be like, oh yeah, that guy's the robot. And then if you try and make a twist out of it, it'll seem a little silly. Mm. But again, at the time, this dude's obviously shady. I don't think you think he's a robot, though.
No, not at all. I didn't think he was a robot. I definitely thought he was like a plant, though. Like it seemed like he knew too
He's
much.
Working against the team, obviously.
Yes,
yeah, there was tons of like ulterior motives going on.
Yeah, like right before, like when they're investigating and the facehuggers on him, there's a part where Ripley goes to talk to him, and as soon as she walks into the room, he turns off the monitors, and I'm like, oh, that's like the universal "I'm up to bad shit" sign.
Yep.
And then like she tries to ask him a question, and he goes to take notes against like blank monitors. And I'm like, really? Could he be any more obvious that he's just like,
yep.
Yeah, just a whole lot of, oh yeah, you won't understand what I'm talking about.
And I think she started to be a little suspicious of him by that point.
Absolutely, yeah. Pretty much since he opened the door against her orders.
Yeah. Which is interesting, because in a lot of situations, that would be like, we're going to throw you in, like, you just violated orders. That's a very big, but it just seemed to...
There's only so many of them once Kane's pretty much out of commission. Just, one of the other 6 people on the ship, so... I guess maybe from that, it's a little bit more leeway. Plus, once Dallas comes back on, she's not actually the captain anymore. And Dallas was telling them to open the door.
That's true.
So I guess it's just sort of, she has to sit on that. After that scene, you get the one where the facehugger's gone, which is a great scene. This is one that I pretty much never remember through the other kind of noisier, more iconic scenes in the movie. They make the decision to have a camera in a really low corner of the room, and it's a pretty long shot of the 3 characters. It's Dallas, Ripley, and Ash, who are searching for the facehugger in the room, and it's just them like walking around. And it's one of those things where you think about, on the day, obviously it's not real, so it's just 3 people walking around a room, and that's just movie magic turning that into something extremely tense. I don't know. I just like movies, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
On top of the fact, like, they just watch this thing latch onto someone's face, and they all just willingly like, yeah, let's all just look around for this thing. Like, what could possibly go wrong?
I thought of that too. Ash is a robot, obviously, but he's like feeling with his hand above sort of like the panels in the ceiling where he can't see where he's putting his hand. It's like, come on, dude.
And the other people were like poking where they couldn't see. Like, let me make this thing jump out at me. Like, it's a surefire sign.
And then there's not a ton of jump scares in this movie, which I appreciate because I think, if they're done well, like this one where it falls out of the ceiling, that's one thing. But when they're cheap, it's sort of cheap.
Well, and as a viewer, you think like, oh, is it going to just like latch onto her face now? Like, is this thing just going to latch onto a lot of faces? But
no, it dies at this point, right? Yeah.
It does, yeah.
And then shortly after that, it seems like Kane's fine.
Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, let's grab something to eat.
Yep.
They're like, oh, we're about to go to sleep, and like, nah, let's have a meal first. Like, I'm real hungry.
Well, and that's the point where Dallas goes, all right, yeah, let's have one more meal. It's on me, guys.
Yeah.
So, and like, I wasn't sure if that was a serious statement or not, but I don't know.
But yeah, so that's right. I always forget that too. That the plan is, okay, let's get back in the cryopods.
Yeah, and like I thought about that as well because I was like, what would have happened if he got into the pod? Like, would the alien have been like in hibernation with him? Would it not have bursted out till they woke up? Like,
we'll never know.
We'll never know.
But that's a good point. Yeah, would it have? I guess I don't know if they specify that they're being frozen or if it's just some kind of other sleep.
That's true.
Yeah, like a mini coma kind of thing.
Yeah, so. Does it just jump out and like break through the glass and
start rampaging through their ship while they're all asleep?
Maybe, yeah.
Because that'd be interesting too. Like, would it even decide to hunt them if they were just in pods the whole time?
Yeah, I mean, it really seems like it's operating on animal instinct and eliminating threats. It's not necessarily seeking them out for food. So maybe like one at a time as it gets hungry, it would burst through and grab one. But that's, I guess, it. But yeah, obviously, they don't make it to the cryopods because this is one of the most famous scenes in the history of the medium happens. I don't know if there's anything necessarily new or fresh we can say about it, but what do it's the chest burster scene. What are your hot takes?
My hot take was like, this alien really should have just let him stay in a coma and then burst out of the chest. I feel like it benefits everybody all around, but for the horror jump scare, that's a lot less scary for the viewer than being awake for, because that's just absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. So this is something that you saw as like a 12-year-old?
Oh, yeah. No, that was very scarring.
Yeah.
But it's also one of those things where like it's so iconic that you still like kind of go back to it, be like, oh, does this scene still like hold up after all these years? And I mean, I say it does.
It super does. I think the reactions from the people around it, it's obviously a puppet, but
the best thing though is that they didn't tell them.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to say, go for it though.
Oh yeah, like when they film this, they're like, oh yeah, like you're just going to hang here, you're going to have breakfast, and like something's going to happen. And they had no idea
so
it was going to be to that extent.
Kane knew he had to like act like he was going to...
Yeah, so his body's under the table and the chest is like pretty much a puppet, pretty much. His head's sticking through a table. And then it's on hydraulics to push the actual thing out of his shirt. The first time they do it, it doesn't break all the way through, but they use that take anyway because it looks like it's struggling and it's more violent to get out. It doesn't like bust through the shirt. So when you see it, like it's obviously out, but it can't get through the fabric yet. They used real like animal blood and guts and didn't tell the cast that they were going to use real animal blood and guts. So some of the shocked expressions is
pre-shocking.
The people who made this movie literally splattered these people with blood and guts without telling them in advance, which is pretty messed up. Apparently it smelled terrible.
Yeah.
Yaphet Kotto, who plays Parker, and I think he actually just died like last year. Apparently, and some of this is IMDb trivia, which is never actually sourced, so who knows? But according to IMDb trivia's page, he went home that day and like locked himself in a room and wouldn't talk to his wife because it was like such a scarring experience to be in the room when this scene happened, which I get. A lot of people apparently were like, okay, I guess we're done for the day because how do you keep working after that?
That's pretty nuts.
Yeah, and ethically questionable on the parts of Ridley Scott or whoever made that decision, but I guess it lent it led to a really iconic scene, and those reactions are what makes it so good even today.
I mean, I don't know if it makes it better or worse, but that's probably the most mild thing I've heard of a director doing that was horrible to get a reaction out of cast members.
Yeah. Apparently, he also told Yaphet Kotto to continually annoy Sigourney Weaver so that there would be real tension between them. That's who plays Parker, one of the maintenance people who seems to legitimately annoy Ripley. So
Gotcha.
Something that Kotto said he wished he hadn't had to do because he thinks that she's a really nice person and felt bad about it afterwards. So that's more of the kind of director stuff you usually hear about, not just like throwing intestines at their cast and crew. Yeah,
just a regular day for Jared Leto.
At that point, we talked about this, the tiny puppet that speeds off across the table. I don't know why. It's so good. I don't know how else to qualify it.
It just reminds me of the old sci-fi movies, like on the Sci-Fi Channel, like the made-for-TV ones. Like I would watch a whole movie of that thing, like just running around chasing people, little one.
It's scary, no doubt. Yeah. Any thoughts on this stage of the Xenomorph's life cycle?
I feel like I don't have too much to say because it only really happens for like 5 seconds, and then it's like instantly, like, oh hey, like it's way bigger.
One of the things I always forget is, like you said, instantly it's way bigger. That's another thing that you cannot possibly be expecting, that just a few minutes later, the next time you see this, it'll be twice as tall as any human in the ship. But we're pretty much in kind of pedal to the metal mode from this point till the end of the movie. They immediately get, it looks like a flower, like watering can, but I guess it's some kind of homing device that they use.
There's no real concept of time.
No, they break into teams to try and find this thing, but really it's Ripley, Parker, and Brett who peel off. They're in the garage where all the big trucks are. They find Jones instead, who makes a lot of appearances in this film. Doesn't really help too much, but Jones, the cat, is messing with their radar system, so they say, oh, we need to grab that. They immediately say it's Brett's fault for not putting the net on it the first time they find it.
Yeah, they're like, oh man, it's just a poor cat, we gotta let it go. And they're like, oh no, we're looking for something small, we can't have something else small here.
Right, yeah, it's messing up the radar, and Brett, you should have grabbed that, so it's on you go find it by yourself now.
Which net was an interesting choice to begin with. I don't know what they thought they were going to do with this net when they found that thing.
It's maybe only been 10, 15 minutes since it jumped out the dude, and it was smaller than Jones at that point.
No, sure.
I mean, also, I
it was longer maybe, but tiny.
They wouldn't have like anything like crazy hunting equipment, I guess. It's probably like, oh, this is a net that we kind of use to hold cargo.
I just love the optimism.
Right, yeah.
Knowing what's coming.
That's a good point. They're not, so much of this is, these are people who this was not their mission, and they do not have the correct tools for this task.
Everything's very on the fly.
Yeah, I mean, even the flamethrowers, there's like, all right, I can go whip these together. Like, it was an improv.
Yeah, he does a good job whipping those flamethrowers together. But what we see next is wet chains.
Wet chains. So weird.
So Brett goes into a different part of the garage by himself and stands under an extremely aggressive leak for a very long time, takes his hat off, stares right into the water, and then keeps walking. And I don't know why he does that.
My guess is that it's just because like everyone's very gross and sweaty through this entire movie. So I don't know if they have any like AC or anything. Like it just must be real gross.
I wrote, he should be concerned and ask about the liquid and chains. If you're on a spaceship and there's that big of a leak, I feel like you should be more concerned.
I mean, I guess it's more like just like condensation because we don't know what the rooms are really for.
That's what I figured too, is it's like that's where, their central air system is, converting to cold air or whatever.
To me, it just seemed like he was walking into their wet chains room that everyone knows exists, and you go in there and there's chains and they're wet, because there was also no discernible purpose for the chains.
Yeah, they just seem to hang from nothing.
Another IMDb trivia shout out. The room where Brett gets taken out by the xenomorph was a point of contention between, every time it mentions Ridley Scott, it says Sir Ridley Scott, between Sir Ridley Scott and the producers. They didn't understand why there would be water pouring or chains dangling in a ship such as this. Scott, feeling he needed the extra movement, stuck to his guns. So Ridley Scott went, because wet chains are cool.
Okay.
And I think they look cool, and it's my movie.
All right.
So yeah, wet chains. It's a good point. Why are there wet chains dangling in this room?
Well, so like Will's point
does
was
look
a
cool.
good one of like, I think it was to show their tradespeople he's like working hard and this is a refreshing like drop for him. But I think the shot would have been better with like a pipe that was leaking rather than these massive amounts of like waterfall chains.
It is creepy because there is like movement and you don't know if that's just them swaying or maybe a massive alien about to kill Brett. Turns out it's both, kind of. I love that this scene is sort of played out by seeing Jones the cat react to this. Brett's trying to grab him. He finds him like in a corner, and Jones starts coming out, but then starts hissing because he sees a massive alien descending from the ceiling behind Brett. But Brett doesn't think anything of it and then turns around. This is the first time we see the big version of the xenomorph. Any thoughts on Big Alien?
Big Alien was really cool.
Agreed.
I definitely like seeing that. The cat scene, I was like, this guy clearly isn't the cat owner, because if my dog was like freaking out about something, I'd immediately turn around and be like, what are you freaking out about? But it was a giant alien, so that's something to freak out about.
He's obviously annoyed by the cat.
Yeah, no, he was not.
So yeah, he's like, oh, stop hissing. Just like, let's go.
This cat was trying to save his life. You got to listen to the cat.
You know the cat's definitely like clawed him a few times.
Yeah. If it would have clawed anyone, it would have been him for sure.
They did a great job with the alien, though. I will say the initial chest bursting alien was, especially for the 70s, greatly done. They knew they had to make the middle form just quickly off screen, and then they did a great job with the new one. And so that's Geiger guy.
Yep. H.R. Giger makes this design from. To get a little into the weeds, we don't have to spend too long here, but he was already an artist who had produced a book called the Necronomicon. It's Necronom 4 that Ridley Scott was shown by Dan O'Bannon, who wrote the movie, who thought this guy would make we would do a really good job with the character design, with the creature design, sorry. And so if you look at Necronom 4 by H.R. Giger, it does look like what the alien looks like. He gets hired onto it and tells Ridley Scott, like, I can make one from scratch. And Ridley Scott says, no, it'll take too much time. Just make it look like this thing you already did. But adapt it so it's more of what we can, like, stick a guy in a suit and have him chase people around a spaceship in. So, yeah, that's basically where the design comes from. Ridley Scott liked that it was, I think the way it's put is, like, it has sexual undertones.
Didn't quite get that.
You didn't?
I mean, I think I'd go with the tongue.
Okay, I guess the tongue.
Yes, it's extremely phallic. It's what it mostly kills people with is that. And yeah, we can talk more about that in its own section at the end. But just from the character design perspective, that was also, I mean, that's what won H.R. Giger an Academy Award. He shared it with the guy who made the actual mechanical parts of the head. I think it's made up of over 900 parts, the actual head of the thing.
So that was something I absolutely noticed. I think at the end I could tell that it was a person in a suit at a certain point, like that clicked. But seeing it for the first time, I was curious. Like, I didn't even think that there was a person inside of it. I was trying to figure out how else they did this, because it really does not look like a person in a suit, which I think was major credit for the times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you say that looks very alien?
It was alien. It was very alien to me.
Pretty alien.
Absolutely. Well, that's the other thing. They had to well, I guess Geiger already came up with it. I was going to say they had to like think of what aliens would look like, and this was a good design.
It was a good design. Yeah, his stuff is pretty nightmarish, but also beautiful, I guess, is what Ridley Scott said, and that's what drew him to it. And good thing it did, because, you know, there's so many ways you can go with that. I guess they were so excited about what the alien looked like that they didn't even tell the dude who wrote the novelization for it what it looked like, and they kept it like really close to keep it, you know, to try and make it a surprise, which, you know, good for them.
Absolutely.
That's a cool thing to do. It's on screen for a total of around 4 minutes in the movie. It doesn't pop up until like about an hour in. So same rules as Jaws, on screen for about 4 minutes.
They knew their limitations.
Less is more. Yeah, absolutely. Less is more.
I think you could do that with modern movies a lot. I think people get really tied up in it. It gets overwhelming. The hints of it are a lot scarier than actually seeing it.
For sure. Yeah. And that's something that's, a problem in a lot of the Alien sequels is that they don't have that element of surprise anymore. So they're like, what if we show you a bunch of them? Does that make it cooler?
I mean, I thought the Queen was pretty cool.
Yeah. And it works in Aliens because that is like, well, you already know what it looks like. So this one's going to be an action movie instead of like a thrilling horror-ish movie.
That just sparked like a weird memory because these movies have been on like TV from time to time.
Sure.
But
Oh, yeah.
is there like a scene where this big alien is chained up?
Oh yeah, and it poops out eggs.
That's where the eggs come from.
I think because you've seen
AVP.
it's chained up down below.
Okay,
Yeah, it's in like a big pyramid or something.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yep, and it just has like a conveyor belt where it just like poops out the eggs from the weird like sack thing.
Everything's got sex.
Yeah, everything has sex.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So then they know it's in the ducts. This is where Dallas goes to the mother room, and he's on the computer, and it says, "What are my chances?" And it says, "Does not compute." Great line from a computer.
My note there was Dallas asked the real questions. After asking everything else, he's like, "All right, cool. Just tell me what my chances are." Nah, I can't even do that.
Yep.
God damn it.
Yeah, for an advanced AI that's supposed to pilot the ship and do all those things, seems very useless.
Up next is the ducks scene where Dallas dies because he had to, obviously. And I feel like this is my pull, like my mental reference point for any time there's a kind of like a homing signal or some kind of beeping, and inevitably they'll lose track of it, and then they'll be like, "Oh no, it's coming right for you," right at the end, and then it kills the guy. Happens a lot. This is always my pull for like, I don't know if they did it before then. There's a little bit of that in Jaws, which is a few years earlier, but I think I'd still give the credit here for it being, I don't know. Don't go in the air ducts.
The plan seemed sound, I guess, up until it came to like, I guess they were going to try to scare it with fire.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was the best call. Maybe they were hoping it was going to burn, but like, I get corral it and launch it into space. That's really the only thing you guys can do with this thing.
Yeah, I think what doesn't help is that the ship is so massive that there's so many air vents where like, it's like, oh, it's right on top of you, but it's really like a level up.
Yeah, I mean, and the tracking technology was not even great. I mean, they
lose track of it right at the worst time.
Couldn't do that.
I think if they hadn't, it might have worked, but I also think that maybe it wouldn't have, because the person who suggests using fire is Ash, and he's more just like from a scientific standpoint of like, I don't know if it'll work, but I want to know if it does or not. Not in this is a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, my takeaway from the aliens was like, oh wow, they were just put into an impossible situation, because they did have guns, but you can't shoot this thing. It's gonna melt all the way through your hull. Like there's you have to either get it out or kill it without it bleeding, because if it starts to bleed, you're just screwed. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, and that was just a little face hugger.
Yeah, it was just the finger of the face hugger. It wasn't even like a full incision. This was like a drop of its blood. I mean...
Yeah, so that's just, as Ash says, pretty soon, but not quite yet. It's a perfect organism. So Dallas gets it pretty bad. And this is the one time where the xenomorph doesn't quite work for me, because it's like dark and then there's a light on it. It's like, give me a hug,
I think that's where I saw that it was like a...
Yeah. Then you're like, oh, it's a dude.
It's a dude.
Yeah, it just kind of like waves its hands a little bit.
Yeah, okay, it goes, I'm scary.
Yeah. I did think it was a weird choice that they chose not to show the bodies that much. I think right at the end they did like a quick flash to but like you don't see Dallas after the alien gets him. He's just gone.
Nope, that's part of the, I guess, issue for them, and makes it even scarier, is they don't know what's happening to the bodies, because they go, what happened to Brett? And they're like, he took him into the ducts. We don't know. We lost him after that.
Oh, right.
So I think that just sort of adds up to it. So now Dallas is gone, and that means that Ripley's in charge. And immediately she's fighting with Parker, and there's a morale breakdown. They're down to just Parker, Lambert, and Ash, and Ripley, obviously. They split up. Ripley goes to Mother and gives an override code to say, like, what is the real mission, because obviously something weird's going on. She does like a few queries and is like, oh no.
Blocked by science officer.
Yes.
Oh, shady guy. Okay, cool.
Yep. So she overrides it, and it tells her finally what the real mission is, which is the transport of this specimen back to the Wayland-Yutani Corporation, and all the crew is expendable.
Weird choice, right? I mean, if that's what they wanted, they should have sent a specialized crew to go get an alien and bring it back. I don't know why they had to infect someone to bring this thing back.
I think that they have been on the lookout for these signals, and so it's just like,
if you come across it,
yeah, you got to go get it. So, I mean, these people are really out in the middle of nowhere, so they don't know how long, if they'll miss their chance if they like wait to send another crew, or they just don't care about these people and they're like, oh, it's fine. Program the ship to come back. You guys will all die.
It seemed almost like they were planning on this specific crew to get it, because this was Ash's first mission. Like Ripley asked Dallas, like, have you worked with him before? So it just seems like a weird, like, I mean, I don't know. It's dystopian. They're a shitty
wrong,
company.
actually.
It's just a little odd that they like didn't. I feel like you'd be more successful if you told people what they were going to get. Maybe people would say no. I mean, maybe that's the other thing.
I think maybe for that is because like they say like Ash does hop on, like I think it's only like 2 days or something.
Right,
like
yeah.
that.
I was going to say,
So
Dallas says, oh, there's a guy I've worked with for like 5 missions, and then 2 days before, they're like, actually, Ash is coming with you.
So my guess is that they got the distress. They needed anyone expendable. No one really cares about a cargo ship. People, like, we don't know the rest of the universe. There's pirates or whatever. So it's like, oh, go with them. They're going to pass by on the way, change the course or whatever, and then they stop off and grab it.
You're not going to send your top scientists to go investigate what might just be like background radiation signals or something. Like, that doesn't lead to anything. That makes sense. Have your crew check it out. If they find something great, if they don't, whatever.
Yeah.
There is something I picked up on that I guess is just part of the sound design that's so good throughout the movie, with just like little weird chittering and computer noises happening throughout. When Ripley's in the Mother room, and I assume the other times, but it's only this last time that anyone's in it that I picked up on it, there's like a weird muffled breathing happening in the background that is muffled enough that it could be like computer fans or something. But I think it's supposed to also kind of sound like breathing. Again, the whole biomechanical thing that it's going for throughout the movie. Just something that I thought was cool.
What I did find interesting with, I mean, we're about to get that with questions. All the doors make a lot of noise, like coming from that. And we never do hear the door open for Ash to come in.
Nope. He's just kind of there all of a sudden. And Ripley doesn't seem surprised either.
Yeah, I feel like it's supposed to get the like very suspensefulness coming. It's like, oh, I found out we're all expendable, and then, it's just there.
And he says, I can explain, and she doesn't want him to explain.
Yeah, like, it's not going to be good when...
I would have loved to hear him try, though.
I know. It's kind of like, wait, no, Leah, let him explain.
Like, all right, what do you got for this? Come on.
If he feels like he has an explanation, which he doesn't really need to give.
Yeah, I mean, it's worse that you're saying you could explain. Like, you should have been like, oh my God, I didn't know about this. Like...
Well... All of it says like blocked by the science officer, so
it said only for the science officer's eyes.
Yeah, maybe he just.
So I'd be like,
checked.
oh, I haven't seen that. I didn't real like. I would have opened it if you asked me to.
So then they go back to sort of the main hub room. There's only so many rooms you actually see on this massive ship, but they go back to the main hub room. Ash closes the doors that Ripley's trying to go through, and then they fight and. He tries to choke her in a very weird way.
That was going to be another weird choice for me.
He rolls up a magazine and then puts it in her mouth the long way, for lack of better terms. Wouldn't she still be? Isn't there still a hole she could breathe through?
I mean,
why not just hand over the face?
That's so. My suspension of disbelief, what I told myself was he was going for making it look like a face hugger killed her, because maybe he was still trying to I'm gonna survive this and I don't want people to know I murdered people. So she got choked by the face hugger, but I guess the egg didn't plant or something. This one was infertile. I don't know.
Yeah. It's almost like he's doing that and is going to try and like force feed or something, but
maybe.
But there's nothing there that he tries to force feed her with. He just kind of holds it in her mouth. She's like, "Stop it."
She seemed to be choking though. Still, her nose was still open though. So I don't.
She's bad at breathing. Everyone knows.
It was a bad choice. It's kind of terrifying when he grabbed the guy's chest and just started squeezing. I thought he was going to rip his heart out, is where I thought that was going.
Going like Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom style, just zoom it out.
Did we know he was a robot at that point? Because I think that's where I definitely like started to get ideas that he was a robot.
Yeah, it was like Ripley pushes him away and he kind of hits his head off the wall, and that's why he kind of drips the white goop.
Yeah, once he starts dripping milk.
And then we're like, oh, well, this definitely isn't right.
Yeah, it's not blood.
Yep. So that's Parker and Lambert come back and they're like, hey, stop murdering. And then they all get in a fight, and that's some really good effects. Ash's head gets knocked off, but he's still fighting. He eventually goes down, and it's just like, again, the grossest biomechanical things possible, which is just like milky orbs and what looks like horrible thick pasta coming out of the dude.
Yeah.
But it's, he's a machine, but it looks so gross.
I mean, the android fight aspect was just as scary as the alien aspect, I think. So this is a really good job done there. You kind of had two like villains, and you didn't know one was a villain.
Ridley Scott would be very pleased to hear you say that, because that's what he thinks is the scarier part of the franchise, supposedly at this point, based on the last couple movies he made.
That's what I think about any horror movie. The human aspect. I mean, if you've seen Stephen King's The Mist, that movie's terrifying, and it has nothing to do with the monsters. I mean, the supermarket is way scarier than the outside. I think I'd take my chances outside.
So a lot of zombie movies are that. 28 Days Later is that.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a good like. Meh.
Yeah, that's always humanity is the worst part. Always.
Hell is empty. All the devils are here. Exactly.
What else do we get? Yeah. So again, it's another sort of old trick where Ash's Ian Holmes, the actor, his body's under like a floor and his head's just poking through it. For where his head's off, and they kind of like wire him. Seems like they kind of hot wire him to wake him up, and this is when he gives his monologue about how it's a perfect organism. And the end of that's so perfect. Correct me if I don't get it perfectly right, but he says, they ask him like what he can do, and they say nothing, but you have my sympathies pretty much.
Yes.
And then he kind of smiles. Great.
I love that part, because my first thought was like, oh great, classic like defeated villain. He's just gonna tell them everything about the alien now. And then when he gets to the end and he's like, it's just a perfect organism, I'm like, oh well, it really doesn't matter what he tells these people. Like he could tell them absolutely everything. There's no way in hell they're gonna survive this thing.
Yep. That's pretty much what he says. Like, it doesn't matter. What do you want to know? As much or as little, but it's not gonna matter. He says he admires its purity. They decide, F it, let's blow up the whole space station. And I wrote, I admire that's purity. Yeah. I don't know. So is it a perfect organism? Do we agree with that?
I mean, I'd say, depending on your definition, knowing what happens throughout like the rest of the series and everything else, like it doesn't need anything. Like, it needs a host, but it seems like the eggs have been there for a while. They still survived, it somehow grew to like 9 feet tall in about 5 minutes, as what it feels like in the movie. And I mean, it seems like it can just kind of hibernate in a wall. Like, it is incredibly smart too. Like, it knows exactly what everyone's doing through the entire movie. It never really makes a mistake.
My question would be more of like a philosophical nature, because it's what is the goal of an organism? Is if it's to be an excellent killer and to like be able to reproduce and survive, then like, yeah, it's a perfect organism, but it doesn't have like wants or desires. It's just a killing machine. I mean, it's no more a perfect organism than the android is a perfect organism, in my opinion. I mean, even birds and animals want to go out and play. Like, you can see puppies playing. You're not going to see an alien. It doesn't do things for joy. It just kills.
It's not going to take its dog for a walk.
Which is great. And like by that definition, absolutely I agree that it's a perfect organism. But
so it's kind of it's sort of damning that mindset, I think, because you're totally right. It's a perfect organism if your definition is this is a weapon, this is a tool.
Yep.
And that is the definition of Ash, who is in there as a surrogate, basically, of the corporation, the Weyland-Yutani Corp.
Faceless robot.
Yeah. And they want it as a weapon. They want it as a tool. They don't want it as, a pet.
The new life
companion.
form.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if we think of First Contact, I want to like talk and converse with aliens. They wanted to go pull a weapon from space.
Yep. That's
different
exactly
goals.
Right. That's exactly right. So that's essentially it. From here on, we're in endgame stuff. I think at that point, she doesn't start the self-destruct sequence yet, but Ripley goes and sort of primes it while Lambert and Parker go and I forget that they need to collect enough coolant. Yeah, they need to collect enough coolant to get the
I believe it's the power
shuttle to work.
like the life support.
Okay, yes, because there's going to be 3 of them.
Yeah, so she rushes there. She's like, "Oh, I'm going to prep the ship to escape." Like, disengages everything, gets everything ready, and then before she even goes to like set up the self-destruct, like the other 2 are already having a bad time.
Yep, she's like can hear them because they're being the loudest they possibly could be. But I kind of appreciate the sort of humanity that's still on display here, because it seems like they're trying not to be loud, and the very first thing Lambert does is super loud. And then you can tell she kind of just goes like, well, fuck it then. And it's like, let's go fast then.
If we can't be quiet, let's be fast.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't work though. The alien does catch out to them. Lambert refuses to get out of the way, so Parker can't use the flamethrower and instead tries to leap at it, seemingly.
Just tries to body him.
Yeah, just tries to body him.
What was I'm curious, like, what other people felt about the scene where she wouldn't move out of the way. Was it frustrating for you? What was your feelings there?
I think I'd say it's just like she doesn't seem like the most stable person through the whole movie.
Yes.
And just like is always very horrified, which I feel like is a terrible quality for someone traveling through space.
Yes.
Because space is terrifying, but she just freezes up. There's nothing she can do. There's this giant monster she already knows has murdered half of her friends that she spent this journey on, and just is helpless. And I mean, at that point, I don't know if he made the best decision to try and body her, but I feel like just, cooking both is kind of a little better option.
I think that's what you have to do in that situation.
Yeah. You're like, okay, well, Lambert's going to die because they won't get out of the way. So,
like, either way, she is dead. I think at that point, the other character goes, I'm going to count to 3 and then I'm going to fire. Either you're going to get flamed or you're going to get eaten. So
yeah. The thing to do there is like, okay, on 3, dive out of the way, and I'll turn this on at the same time.
If she doesn't dive, you tried. But I was annoyed at first, and then as soon as like the scene passes, you think about it, and you're like, that's exactly what that person would do. Like,
she froze. She freeze. That's my take too. Is that, I mean, she is up against a wall. There's not really like a corner she can hide behind.
Yeah,
but
she could have came forward.
So in a vacuum, there's not really anything you can do. But the other dude's about to distract it, so be like. He's like, get out of the way. Be like, okay, I can't. If I move, it's going to pounce on me. But you do that, and then I'll like try and get out of the way.
Well, we don't.
I'm gonna be a little bit on fire, but I'll jump out of the way and then start rolling. I don't know.
And the alien, I mean, theoretically, has never seen fire before, so that could be a shock to the system. I mean, you get one.
I think that is. So it's funny you put it that way, because that is eventually it's established that fire doesn't really affect them in the alien stuff, because they can.
His blood is acid. I don't know what you think fires.
They can survive being in like molten lead, I think. And then in the game Alien Isolation from 2014, something like that.
It's been a little bit, yeah. It sounds real right.
So that's a game that came out and was really popular. But just in case you're listening and you don't know, a lot of it is you kind of going room to room through this space station, hiding from a xenomorph. You can hide in lockers, under tables, all that stuff. You can get a flamethrower, and the first time you use it, it will scare the alien away. The second time you use it, it won't.
No, I mean, it's going to be safe because it is the perfect
Yep.
killing organism.
Yep.
It's going to back up, and then it's like, oh, that's all you got.
Yeah, exactly. So you can use fire to sort of direct it early in the game, but then it like learns that it can just walk through it pretty much.
Yeah. Did they establish what electricity does to them? I was kind of curious about that. That I could see maybe.
We'll never know. I mean, they did grab the cattle prods to find the little one, but I mean, we never even saw them
Saw that.
try. So
They should have kept on with those. I feel like that's not a terrible idea, right?
True weakness is baking soda. You just sprinkle it on them, gets in their bloodstream, acid, base. Come on.
Wow. They should have had you.
I think that would be a terrible movie if the bad guy's killed by baking soda in the end.
almost like a one dying from oxygen or water.
Yeah. I like that. So yeah, I put Lambert just standing there. Ripley on her own, blowing it up time. So yeah, this is all hero shit from this point on. Pretty much every frame of the rest of the movie is iconic. It's
Missed something. She
Yeah.
starts the self-destruct. Why did she go and try to turn it off? What was the goal there? Because she ended up going back to the ship anyway. I didn't understand. Did I miss something?
I think it was like her trying like self-preservation because she's like, oh, I'm not going to make it now because the alien was blocking the path.
Oh, it was okay.
But I mean, also, I don't know why she spent so much time trying to find this cat.
Yeah, she does go back for Jones. So to your point, I meant to try and find out. I feel like I am missing the specifics of why she does go back and try to disengage the self-destruct sequence.
Yeah, I feel like I would have tried to get it to follow me. Yeah, I'd run the other way, but like she wastes a lot of time and she's stationary. I don't know if I'd ever be stationary after the death of the other two.
That it is smart though that they designed it. So it's not smart that the people who made the fictional ship fictionally designed it this way, but from a movie standpoint, there's so many steps where she just has to be like in a noisy room to get this thing to work or to turn this thing off. And you're just like, oh my God.
Very high stakes. It seems like she even got it too. And the tech just was like buggy and went through anyway.
Yeah.
And that's like my favorite because that's classic corporate America.
Yep. She calls mother a bitch and then she's like,
It smashes the consoles like, well, I guess I'm out of here.
yep. So at that point, she had already run through the hallways and seen Parker and Lambert, and I think had already almost encountered the alien, but then ran back. That's when she leaves Jones behind, I think.
Okay.
Yes.
But then is like, no, actually, I do want to bring Jones with me.
Well, it was that was the path right to the airlock that led
Yep.
to the escape pod.
Yeah, exactly. So she goes back, even though there is a brief shot of the alien kind of looking at the cat like, what's up with this cat? Cat's still there. She picks it up, does this run. There's a lot of really cool stuff that happens here that is just carried essentially on a strobe light effect and close-ups on Sigourney Weaver's face of her looking really terrified, but unlike Lambert, still able to like push herself to keep going.
To go, yeah.
And it's just awesome. She does a great job. Her eye acting is awesome in these scenes where she's still on the ship before she gets to the shuttle. And she gets there. She's tossing Jones around. It ends up on its side. It ends up kind of toppling over the case that the cat's in.
It was a solid steel cat carrier, though. That was
Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah, that's true. We can imagine that in the scene where Ripley was back in the control room, the alien was trying to get into the cat case and couldn't do it.
If only I was cut.
Yeah, if only. So eventually we get onto the shuttle and Ripley thinks everything's fine. She gets off not right before, but she gets off with enough space to not be caught in the blast when the ship self-destructs and then takes all her clothes off. And that's what you want to talk about?
So up into this point, we have another uniqueness in a movie, right? This is a horror movie where there's been no gratuitous female nudity for no goddamn reason, right? Every single other horror movie has that shot. And I know we're at the end of the movie, last 15 minutes, let's have her take off her clothes, and for some reason she's got a plumber's crack the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, weird choice.
They do not fit very well.
I do see it as being like she was like vulnerable now. That's why she was like, she took her clothes off. It's kind of like a shut, but I don't know if it's necessary, I guess.
I think it was more just to prepare for the next scene as it was. Or actually, she is undressing to get into the cryopod.
Yeah.
So, and she does feel, secure.
I read an interview with Sigourney Weaver about this because I was also like, if I was stretching, I could say, well, she's just seen a bunch of her friends die over the last couple days, is covered in some of their blood and stuff. So I'm just going to take these clothes off. She thinks she's alone, so whatever. And what she said, people have said to me, oh, how could you demean yourself by doing a striptease? And I say, are you kidding? After 5 days of blood and guts and fear and sweat and urine, do you think Ripley wouldn't take her clothes off? It never occurred to me for a second that people would think my strip was exploitative. I think it's kind of provocative. You're almost seeing me through the alien's eyes. Suddenly I go from this dark green animal to this pink and white animal. So she thought in that point it's sort of highlighting the human vulnerability that it's just, her in her most basic form at that point. She didn't think it was exploitative at all. She also says in that same interview, she thought it was kind of unfair because the alien's naked the whole time. So she thought she should take all her clothes off. But the people making the movie were like, no, don't do that. And she said, because of the kind of fan mail she gets now, she's very glad she didn't take all her clothes off.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Good for her.
Yeah. So yeah, pretty, I thought she had, obviously it's her saying it. It's a pretty interesting take on that. It's still, yeah, it does, like, without that context, I don't know if it does enough to kind of be like that. She just, it really is, she gets in the shuttle and then just starts taking her clothes off. She doesn't go like, oh man, I'm covered in so much sweat. Not that she would need to, but it could underline that a little bit more.
Well, I personally, even if I was covered in blood, sweat, whatever, she just 15 minutes ago escaped for her life. I think a better, like, she's a human would be like her getting a drink or like, just doing normal, like, let me like settle down. I don't know if my first thought would be like, these clothes off now.
Yeah.
It would come. That would probably be like 30 minutes in. I'd be like, oh my God, this is disgusting. But
yeah.
I don't think disgusting would register for a little bit.
That's fair.
I think the thought more is just like, she's like, I'm done with this. Like, I've just watched all this happen. I'm like, we need to go to sleep. Like, just block it out.
Oh, yeah. Freeze me. I don't want to process.
Yeah, she was just like, nope, I'm done. Like, I took care of the cat. Cat's all like in the tube. She's like, I'm just going to get myself in.
Yeah, there's not a shower on the shuttle, but this is definitely the kind of thing that you're just like, taking a cold shower, I'm going to bed.
Yeah, and just like does her final preparations. Like, all right, I'm going to go to sleep. Well, hopefully I get to wherever the ship is going.
Yeah. But before she can, I always love this, that the alien's kind of just taking a nap in the wall. So what'd you make of this? Were you surprised that there was still an alien?
I knew the alien was still somewhere. I was a little confused as to why it was just curled up too. It does speak to the alien's intelligence though, because I feel like it did know the ship was going to be blown up because it got out of her way and then hid in the other ship. Like, it didn't chase her. And it could have chased and caught her if it had wanted to.
Yep.
It kind of had an idea, like with the alarms and everything, maybe that like this bad stuff going on.
Yeah.
There's the perfect organism right there. Just like,
perfect organism.
Helping out.
But yeah, it always looks to me like your roommate's been sleeping off a hangover and you like come in and you turn the lights on. They're like, what are you doing? And then because he sees her, and then kind of goes back to he kind of like rolls back over, like, turn the light off.
Plenty of time to get into the spacesuit.
Yeah, I think that's really polite. She like kind of goes like, oh man, and runs into the closet.
That's also where my electricity question was coming from, because I didn't know if it jammed itself in the console. Maybe it got like shocked to sleep or something.
Yeah. Or it's just tangled in those wires. It's a little unclear why it doesn't, leap out and attack her at that point. But
I think it is just because it's like so far in.
Yeah.
Because even afterwards, it still takes a little bit to get out.
It does, yeah. Not wrong. Then closet prep, and then she sits down after putting on the full spacesuit and is about to execute the plan to blow it out the back of the ship. She sings "You Are My Lucky Star" over and over again to herself, which apparently the producers of the movie were mad at Ridley Scott, including, because then they had to go get the rights for that, which is pretty funny.
Why did she decide? Was there a reference to that in the?
Nope.
Okay.
I think it's just, I'm sure at some point someone in the last 4 years has asked her about this, but I didn't find that interview. So I think it's just, a person in a really stressful situation. Maybe this is a mantra type thing. This is just like I need to like physically force myself to do these 3 tasks to be safe, no matter how scared I am. And this is just going to keep me on point.
100% got that. That's what I assumed as well. I mean, I do the same thing whenever I need to get over something like very scary, like I have my own in my head. But to hear that she made them go get the rights, it just seems like a very like, so now it's a little bit more than that mantra to me. It's just like, why was this so important? But like you said, I'm sure somebody's asked her.
I think it's cool. Then she gets him, pushes him out the ship.
And to the fire point, you notice it's in the jet, and like, it pushes him off, but it didn't burn him. It just pushed him off. Like, he was still clawing at it was fine. Mm-hmm. It's completely fine. I mean, I think it's still alive, just floating out in space. I don't think anything happened. It's just not in her boat anymore.
Yeah, someone's just going to pick it up later.
It seems like it, right? Because it is still, fighting to get back on board once it gets pushed out. But it's not like, you see humans get pushed out into the vacuum of space and freeze or whatever. Yeah. It looked fine.
Yeah, it looked fine.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't need like oxygen or anything.
No.
Very curious about the life cycle / span of these things, because like, is there a big giant one running around on that primordial planet like that burst out of the engineer's chest? Like, where did he go?
Yeah.
Oh, is that in the other movie?
I don't believe so.
We'll get into it.
Okay.
Let's wrap up this movie first. That's pretty much it. She does the signing off thing at the end, does the last, audio log.
Yep.
Gets Jones all situated and presumably goes to sleep. And that's it for this movie. In Aliens, she wakes up 57 years later, and it turns out her daughter grew up, had a life, and died.
Did she mention the daughter?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But in the second one, she has a daughter. Oh, she's dead.
That was quick.
It's been 60 years, and I guess the kid was already born. So it's like,
checks out.
It's not like it was a tragic death. She
it's
was
like, mom's
an
going on
old-ish
one
person.
mission, and then we'll be back, like a few weeks.
Yep. So final thoughts on this. So first time seeing it.
It's a good movie. It's a really good movie. Especially like, I mean, to be honest, I wasn't 100% sure of the time frame, so I thought this was like a 1994 movie. So I may have been a little bit more critical in my initial watch than finding out like just today that it was 1979. I'm actually incredibly impressed to know it was 1979 and not like I said. I mean, the fact that I thought it was 15 years later anyway is a credit to the movie. So
yeah. And so I don't know if you have an actual number of how many times you've watched it in your head, but still good?
Oh, yeah. It's one of those movies that like you can always return back to. And it's always still like quality. And I mean, you always pick up on those little things that you forgot about or like just happen to look over. But definitely holds true to like the sci-fi genre.
Yeah, it's so good. A lot of the kind of iconography and importance of this film is obviously with Sigourney Weaver's character, Ripley. This is one of the earliest, if not the earliest example of a female-led genre film that has an actual heroine who doesn't have romantic interest
whatsoever. Doesn't even talk about romance.
Nope, just gets it done. That's pretty much it. So yeah, it's got kind of everything in this movie. It's got, strong female lead. It's got dudes feeling uncomfortable. It's so good. I actually have a list of different things that have ranked Ripley. AFI in 2008 said she was the 8th best hero in American film history. It's the second highest ranked female character after Clarice from Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, well.
It's a weird kind of weird company to be in, but out of context, but I'm sure it looks fine on the list, whatever. Entertainment Weekly had Ripley 5th on their list of 20 all-time coolest heroes, saying she's one of the first female movie characters not defined by the men around her or her relationship to them. Number 9 on Empire Magazine's 100 Greatest Movie Characters in 2008, moved up to number 5 in 2015. Both times the highest ranked woman. ranked 8th on Premiere Magazine's 100 Greatest Movie Characters of All Time. MTV selected her as the 2nd greatest movie badass of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And the only woman on that list, aside from Sarah Connor from the Terminator movies. Total Film had her the best female character in any movie ever. So yeah. For her part, Sigourney Weaver was nominated for a BAFTA for Best Leading Newcomer and a Saturn Award for Best Actress in the sequel Aliens, which comes out in, I want to say like 84 or something like that, 85
I
maybe.
believe it's 84.
She gets nominated for Best Actress, and that's, I think I mentioned earlier, only the 3rd time, but a horror actress in history had been nominated for Best Actress. I didn't mention this at the time, though, in case you're curious. Ellen Burstyn in The Exorcist and Sissy Spacek in Carrie are the other 2 at that point. So yeah, Ripley is a really important character for a lot of reasons. Anything on Ripley you want to say? I feel like I've been talking for a long time. I'll probably cut half that out.
I like the point specifically of like she's not strong because of the male leads, and it's foiled to the point where like she's the only redeemable character in the entire movie.
Pretty much.
And like she's actually the strong, successful lead in spite of every single male character. And for that time, again, I mean, this is 1979. I'm surprised the movie wasn't protested. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. Serious.
People... it was just so well done. I mean, my other question is Ridley Scott. I don't know their gender. Is this a male director?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. Throughout his career, he's cited a lot for, having powerful women in his movies. He's got 2 more movies coming out just this year. He's 83, but not slowing down. Both of them, I believe, are the lead character is a female. He's got The Last Duel. Jodie Comer's character seems to be the lead of that. It's not out yet, so maybe I'm wrong. And then House of Gucci, which also comes out this fall. And by the time this comes out, I think Last Duel will be out, but not actually sure. But anyway, and then House of Gucci seems to be about Lady Gaga's character, mostly. So he's someone who stays super prolific. This was his first big movie. It's not his debut. He made The Duelists before that, but that had like a $900,000 budget. Alien, a big step up from that. So really his first big wide release film. Crazy way to start things.
Still making movies today.
Yeah. I think he follows this up with Blade Runner and is just, he's just on an absolute heater.
Well, I might be on a podcast for that one too.
Yeah. No?
No, neither one.
Ooh, love Blade Runner. Have you seen Prometheus and Alien Covenant?
Yeah, I've seen all of the movies.
Okay, yeah. Had you seen either of those?
No.
Would you believe me if I told you that Michael Fassbender, a great actor, does an amazing job playing an android in both Prometheus and then playing a different android in Alien Covenant, but then his android from Prometheus joins about an hour into Alien Covenant, and he plays 2 androids. They have like a very intimate scene where they teach each other how to play the recorder, and then they make out.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's almost like every android is like the same one, almost like clones.
Gotcha.
They have wildly different accents, but they look the same.
It's almost like a weird like balancing on different like ideals because like they're different patch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like
iOS.
Different iOS.
Yep.
And they have definitely a lot of like interesting things, and definitely has you asking a lot of questions the rest of the movie up until the end.
So I watched Alien Covenant for the first time last night.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I saw that in theaters.
Yeah, no, I kind of wish I had. I feel like it would have been a fun time. I do want to know what the crowd reaction was when Michael Fassbender has a long scene of teaching himself to play the recorder. And then also a few scenes later when he kisses himself.
When did this one came out? Like
2017.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Prometheus. So both of these are kind of mixed reaction, but I think they're actually both good.
I enjoyed them.
Yeah, I like Alien Covenant actually kind of a lot. So.
I very specifically remember Prometheus coming out because I remember not having any clue what this movie was about, except for arguably a large object falling on a crew running away. Because I just saw that ad nauseum. That was the only thing I could see about this movie. And then I find out now that it's actually an Alien prequel, which he didn't want people to...
Yeah.
Yeah, he was talking that it wasn't. And to be fair, so they find the engineers, and turns out the engineers are the race that is the space jockey from Alien.
And so that's like after the turn of the movie. So it's kind of a similar setup to Alien where like they're just on a space mission, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and you don't actually see anything even like really resembling a xenomorph. There is like an extremely large version of a facehugger kind of.
Yeah.
Huh,
And then in the post-credit sequence, you see a squid alien human hybrid alien burst out of someone in the post-credit sequence. And it kind of looks like the xenomorphs that we recognize.
What's the genetic?
Yeah, there's a space squid. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's Prometheus.
Okay.
It's like a giant facehugger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like when I say giant, I mean like enough where it could probably eat you whole.
So
Squid, alien, human though. I'm just curious how we get three DNAs
geez.
in this.
Yeah, so
Science mumbo jumbo.
there's like some dodgy science that the android does and like secretly infects people with different strands of DNA and stuff.
And includes an alien pregnancy, kind of.
Yeah, it's a lot. So I love Alien because it doesn't bother with any of the backstory of why this is happening, how this got here.
Okay.
But if you're feeling like, oh, I need that, that's all Prometheus is.
Oh man. Okay. I do kind of need that.
I mean,
There you go. Then you'll enjoy that. And then Alien Covenant further clarifies that. And so you see like these kind of weird version, this kind of weird version of the xenomorph right at the end credits of Prometheus. And then I don't want to spoil it because it seems like you're going to watch it, but then you're like, okay, this is only, 20 years before the events of Alien. How do they get from there to there? And they kind of explain how they get from what that looks like to what the xenomorph in Alien looks like.
Kind of wondering what order I need to watch these things in.
Probably like film release, I'd say.
Yeah.
Next should be Aliens.
Yeah. Yeah, as
You
they
can,
were released is fine, I think.
You can definitely skip over the fourth Alien movie, though.
I'm not gonna do it. You guys keep telling me how terrible it is. I'm gonna watch it like a sci-fi movie.
There you go. I guess that's a good way to do it. And then just because I said we'd come back to this, so yeah, the sort of sexual undertones and the phallic imagery that you didn't pick up on, but was very explicitly included by the makers of the film to make dudes who were like seeing a horror movie uncomfortable, because the whole action of how this alien operates is that it like rapes a dude. And then the dude has like a violent pregnancy.
Okay.
And then the alien itself, its head looks like a penis.
I can see that, yeah. It's very drippy.
And it definitely
It's very
uses
drippy.
its tail in interesting ways.
Yes.
Mm.
And then also it has like the pharyngeal jaws that pop out.
Yeah, that looked like a dick. I can see that.
And that's a dick too. So it has, it's supposed to be not clear if it's male or female because it has kind of both sets of imagery suggestively going on. That also sort of was part of what drew Ridley Scott and Dan O'Bannon, who wrote the film, to Giger's material. So yeah, it's got all that kind of stuff going on, and it was explicitly designed to make dudes uncomfortable in a way that they hadn't been uncomfortable before in a movie like this.
Gotcha.
And I think it's successful.
No, definitely.
I think you need to have a fear of penetration for that. And I think my orientation might make that a little less of a concern.
True enough.
And I don't, I'm just thought-wise, it's not actually that terrifying for me.
So yeah, maybe you get something else out of it.
It's like, oh, baby.
Watching this during the pandemic, especially during the time when, as we're recording, this Delta variant's terrible, but more and more people are being made to return to work in everything is fine kind of fashion.
Oh man.
And then one thing I do want to touch on is like really, further reading kind of stuff. Dan O'Bannon, who wrote this movie, the movie he worked on before this as a student at, I think it was USC, was a student movie he made with John Carpenter, who is this legendary director. I think I've talked about him on the podcast before. He does, Halloween, They Live, The Thing,
Oh, okay.
Big Trouble in Little China, Escape from New York, all these huge movies that are awesome, and weren't appreciated in their time. All that good stuff. Anyway, they make this movie together as students called Dark Star. That's about a working class crew of a spaceship in deep space, isolated, and it's sort of a comedy version that Dan O'Bannon writes a few years before he writes Alien, of these like people in space just getting stoned and like passing the time doing a job that they hate, and it's kind of dark, and there is an alien that like jumps around and attacks people and stuff.
Okay.
Honestly, I'd be really interested in watching that.
It's really good. I just for this other podcast that I listen to a lot is doing all the John Carpenter movies. So I just watched Dark Star for the first time, and I didn't even know who Dan O'Bannon was until then. But they work on that student film together. They get some money to make it into a real film. The next movie after that Dan O'Bannon works on that actually gets produced is Alien, that he writes. In between, he worked a little bit on the version of Dune by Jodorowsky that never came out. Not the Lynch one, but the one that was supposed to come out in the late 70s, but never ended up getting produced. But then he goes right to Alien, writes that. The original title is Space Beast.
Bad title.
And then he's like, he said like he always hated that, but looking at his manuscript, it says Alien a bunch of times. And he's like, oh, easy, just like a clean noun.
Slap it on there. You get one, right? I mean, he took it. Well, that's it.
It's funny. So, the movies that he goes to work on, Alien, same idea. Can't believe no one's named a movie this before.
Yep.
A couple movies after Dark Star for John Carpenter is Halloween.
No.
And
damn,
how has no one named a movie Halloween before? It's just simple.
Let's make Christmas, right?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Nobody's made Christmas movie.
Murder Santa.
Christmas.
They made Black Christmas. That's the problem.
Oh man.
But not just
appropriation.
Christmas.
I can't do it.
That's with Krampus, right?
Yeah, there's a Krampus. I don't know. I haven't seen Black Christmas. I hope there's a Krampus though.
Zombie movie, Easter.
Yeah. And they mostly do a good job hiding that it's a dude in the costume. Like we've said that before.
Yep.
They actually found that guy that's in the xenomorph costume just hanging out at a bar because he's just so like incredibly tall that they needed someone to wear that suit.
And specifically also super skinny, right?
Yeah,
oh yeah.
It just happened to be just some random bar at the town. They were like getting ready to like go off to start filming, and they just stumbled upon this guy. And they're like, "Hey, do you want to make some money and go be in a movie?"
And he did.
Yeah, he did a wonderful job.
Yeah, he really did. He did a great job. You're looking through your notes. You got anything?
Looking through my notes. I have Ash equals Dum Dum. I like that one.
Yeah, he does.
Let's see. Oh, yeah, cut the bitch. Holy shit, I was wrong. Yep. That was the acid scene, in case anyone was wondering.
Yeah.
I have haven't you people ever heard of closing the goddamn door? Because like they're looking for the xenomorph and the back door's open, and then when they're looking for the little one, like again the doors are open. Anytime I walked into a room after the alien reveal, doors closed, right? Like, I need to know behind me is safe at all times, and they're just like, whatever.
Oh yeah, I mean, you see through the whole movie that Ridley is really the only like voice of reason through the whole movie, and just no one pays attention to her.
Nope.
Not at all.
And she survived, so I mean, there's that.
Yep.
That was right after Dallas dies. I absolutely loved We Have to Stick Together, and then it was like, no, I'll go get it. Nobody followed me, and he just goes off by himself. It was there wasn't even a 15-second break between the two statements. It was amazing. Yep. Nope, just the other one was other possible reasons for self-destruct on the ship. That was my only other.
Yeah. Quite a violent explosion. I think that's the one thing that didn't age very well, and obviously from that time is the
tough to do.
Effects for the explosion were
as we were talking about it too, like just now it hit me. She didn't really even need to blow up the ship. She could have just left.
Well, you don't want anyone coming back and like having to deal with that.
Yeah.
I guess you also don't know like what is actually going on with the other people still on the ship. Maybe they're infected in some way.
It's fair.
That's probably a better safe than sorry thing. I think you're right.
And I mean, I guess you don't know what's on the cargo either. And it might just be like, company guidelines. Like, hey, if you can't hold the cargo, make sure no one else can have it. Blow it up.
If there had been another character, they would have asked that question, and he would have said it's in the contract.
Yeah, it's in the contract. If you can't have it, blow it up. No
In
one
case of aliens, space pirates, or corporate takeover, self-destruct.
So in Aliens, you'll see this, but she basically gets stripped of her rank and everything because of questionable judgment because they don't believe her story.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So they think
That's
she kind of
very 70s.
Yep.
Oh, and don't worry, everything plays the same kind of way where no one listens to her.
This is beautiful.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, so you're not wrong. They're gonna be like, why'd you have to blow up the ship?
So.
Well,
Oh no, I took the wrong
but
side.
I definitely would recommend
go.
the other movies for you to watch.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and let us know what you think about them because it's a good time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the pod, guys.
Yeah, no problem.
No, thanks for having us.
No one's had a good answer to this yet, but do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, in space, no one can hear you scream.
That's right.
By the crypto.
Okay.
Mm.
All right. That's it.
All right. See
Cool.
you later, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks.